On YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
Hi, YouTube. Just kidding.
How you doing? We're always so ever busy, as you can see. Miss Lowe is texting Marty from her phone. Just going away.
So it's like this exactly like that.
Been there.
But it's a Friday.
It's Friday. Happy Friday, Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to Disclosure Live with Brady Austin Long. I'm Heather, and today I have with me
Jennifer.
Today it is March 15th, 2019, and on today's episode we're going to discuss a few news stories and talk about guardianship. So, but first we'll cover a few fun things and some local news stories. We might be having some little technical difficulties, but basically we just wanted to kind of honor and remind everybody that St. Patrick's Day is Sunday. So most people that know Jennifer, that she is our criminal attorney, so this is going to be a great big weekend.
Oh yeah.
So we basically always tell everybody, just kind of be careful and cautious when celebrating St. Patrick's Day. It is on Sunday, so maybe we won't have too many calls, or maybe calls will be flooding on Monday. But basically, the color green and parades and March 17th, do you know what they all have in common?
St. Patrick's Day?
Yes, which is also known as a feast of St. Patrick. So St. Patrick's Day is celebrated by millions of people across the globe. People wear the color green, drink green beverages, and decorate their houses and business in shamrocks. So, in fact, the wearing of green is a tradition that dates back to a story written about St. Patrick in 1726. So St. Patrick was known to use the shamrock to illustrate the Holy Trinity and to have worn green clothing. So, of course, to observe it, you can wear green and be safe.
I mean, I don't feel like I'm festive at all. I don't do any of those things.
See, no, yeah, green beer all the way.
Maybe I should. Maybe I should do something.
Yes. So today we're going to kind of jump right in and get into today's topic, which is guardianship. So the legal issue, that's not the updated one. So the issue as far as with guardianship is, the question is it really a legal issue, the guardianships?
Oh, absolutely it is. From incapacitated adults to even minors. It can be something that can play into an elderly parent who needs help and can't necessarily make decisions on their own, and it needs to take one step further beyond a power of attorney. Sometimes siblings can't get along with who's the best one for the parent, and they fight over them, and that's not really in the best interest of the parent. So sometimes it really does take a court to sit down and say, no, this is the best person, or to appoint someone that's not family that can make decisions for this person who's just not able to anymore, or is a minor child and can't, the parents are not necessarily the best fit, but they need someone to speak for them, and they have a voice there as well. So yes, it's absolutely a legal issue.
And a lot of people, what they don't understand when it comes to guardianships is, especially minor children excluded, because of course parents are supposed to make those decisions for their kids. And unfortunately, if a parent dies, or there's not, somebody, say someone goes with, a relative or something, there are different estate planning documents and things. There we go, yay. That can kind of inquire from that. But when it comes to elderly, the biggest thing within the guardianship courts is there's two things. Guardianship And what people don't understand is if say that you're dealing with one of your elderly grandparents or your parents, and they're defiant because they are not taking their medication, the guardianship courts only oversee guardianships in the event of mental incapacity. It's not, if an elderly person is able to take medication to kind of get back on track and not be unruly, so to speak, these aren't the kind of cases that we want to take. And so a lot of people don't understand that process of it. But so basically, as far as how are we as a firm able to help a person that needs to obtain guardianship?
Well, kind of just what you had mentioned, you need to make sure that they're declared legally incapacitated before you take it to a court to have them help decide that issue. It can be even more complicated if a ward has substantial property or assets to manage.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a lot that can play into it, but it may be kind of more time and cost effective to just come to an attorney like the Guardianship law firm and have them handle this case for you. Some courts are very particular about the guardianship process and what they need and what's required. And an attorney that's familiar with those courts would be better suited to navigate that process for you rather than you just kind of trying to crash and blind by yourself. And you know, we do that here. We have a whole department dedicated to it. And so I think it's worth the time and money, especially for that incapacitated adult. I mean, they're worth it because they probably are parents at this point. And how much have they dedicated to you over your life? So they're worth it to spend the money and make sure it's done properly the first time so that they really are protected and their rights are protected as well.
Yeah. And another thing, I mean, because when we speak about guardianship, there's guardianship of person and there's guardianship of estate. And in doing, you know, I'm the senior paralegal for the firm, but my department is the estate planning. And part of that process is trying to prevent or to, you know, pre-plan for these situations to happen. And so with that being said, you know, a guardian of person basically, of course, is to make the day-to-day decisions, medical, where they provide, you know, or reside. And then of course, guardian of estate, you said about the financials and they're kind of being able to manage that. And that alone, I know here in Tarrant County Statutory Probate Court, you can be a pro se party for guardian of person, but when it comes to handling the guardian of estate, it is a big, lengthy process, like you said, and the courts do require that you actually have an attorney to help facilitate that. So on to the next question. Can you elaborate about how long the process basically can take as far as within guardianship?
So for the temporary guardianship, it can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on the courts and gathering information. If you have to declare that person incapacitated and get those medical documents as well, it can lengthen the process, but typically what we see is 3 to 6 months, of course. That can vary.
Yes, it does vary.
And then permanent can be 3 to 9 months, depending on, you know, court proceedings and how long it takes to get one and how long it is before everyone's available and to kind of fit everything in. So I would say probably dedicate a year to both temporary and permanent, because you have to make the temporary permanent. So dedicate your time about a year to get this going, and hopefully sooner.
Oh, yes, and that's the thing that when we get in there, you know, everybody, especially as attorneys, they expect you to have superpowers and they want you to get in and get out. And guardianship is not a quick process. The only thing with temporary that can kind of occur is, of course, if you have a proposed ward that's a harm to himself or endangering or, you know, hurting themselves in a course, the biggest thing is to get them somewhere, facility, you know, and getting orders where you can make them where they're okay. But yeah, the process itself, it's guardianship courts basically remove rights, and that, you know, as an attorney, you know, you have all these Fifth Amendment rights that you're able to do and stuff, but with guardianship, it's removing those rights, you know, to vote, to marry, to, you know, make sound decisions for yourself. And so you never want to rush, you know, when it comes to that, because you want to assess that person's capacity and what they're able to do versus what they're not able to do. So.
Right, and I think the court wants to make sure it's the right person for the job.
Yes.
You know, if they, you know, once it happens, it's probably very difficult to unring that bell. and get them removed and then put someone else, and then it's a whole nother year process, and then where is that proposed ward at in the whole thing? So courts want to be very particular on who they choose and who they let be a guardian.
Yeah, because it's the same, with estate planning, we kind of go in and make our executors and our trustees and our power of attorneys, and you hear about the fraud and theft and forgery just on that, but let alone picking someone to be your guardian and managing, and especially dealing with this type of law and being in the field of that, paralegal for as long as I have, one of the biggest things is we're dealing with adults. And they're used to maintaining their financials, and usually these are your parents, and so they're used to directing and guiding you. So when it comes opposite turn, you're always going to have, some flag back, as I call. But it's, like you said, it has to be that right person. You definitely don't want just someone.
A random person.
A random person. You want to make sure the courts qualify them. So basically, do you have any tips for someone that needs to obtain a guardianship, basically?
So I even think it's a requirement of the courts now. I just did a CLE on this, and I think they're trying to push it more and more. Is that you have to consider alternatives to guardianships before you even petition the court for guardianship. So if there is something else that will fit the situation, the court is going to tell you to do that. Whereas if you can go before a judge and say, we have considered everything, and here's why none of those will work, and the only option left is the guardianship. And this plays back into what you were saying about the rights of the individual that you're trying to strip. The court wants to make sure that it's the least invasive on someone's life and someone's rights that it can be. Now, guardianship's figuring it every day. And so that's not to say that it's not the right fit for your particular situation or your particular family, but you do have to make sure that, and it's a good thing because your parent or whoever it is being very protected in the Texas court system. And having to say, there is no other alternative. This is our only option, and you need to strip their rights because that's kind of where we're at in the situation. And so if you can protect that child's well-being in another way, great. If you can't, that's why they're there, that's why the courts are there, and that's why the guardianship process is there. So I would say get someone that understands that and be willing to be flexible. I know a lot of people sometimes come in and say, no, I want a guardianship.
Yes.
But sometimes you'll have to be flexible, and if you're not, that could really delay the process out longer in the court system if you're not willing to consider other alternatives.
And there are, when it comes to, I'm a big advocate for pre-planning, and I know within this department, nobody wants to talk about passing, nobody wants to talk about the future and funeral arrangements, but it's better because, again, with court alternatives, if you don't do anything, then this is the only, direction that you can do. Because one of the, I guess, best example cases is if there is someone that has dementia or Alzheimer's and they don't have a medical power of attorney or wills, they don't have capacity to be able to sign those documents. So there's not alternatives. So then the only alternative, basically, if one person is, staying at home, and this incapacitated person is refusing to get treatment and the cops are being called, and, we've had people literally running naked down the street. So, those are perfect cases, but I always stress, if you're of sound mind, even with you and myself and children, seek guardianship. Go ahead and put declaration of guardianship in there. Talk to your estate planning attorney to, kind of pre-plan for these things and have these documents so the court doesn't come in and stick you with your aunt that you're not so fond of.
Right, exactly.
So, but basically that's all the time that we have today, so we're glad that you joined us on Disclosure Live with Brandy Austin Law. Please enjoy your weekend. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us any comments or questions. We will definitely see you back in 2 weeks. Again, remember to be safe and no drinking or driving. Uber, there's so many different lifts and everything else as far as on Sunday, but be safe. And basically, I'm Heather Jameson, and this is
I'm Jennifer Lowe.
And so happy Friday, and thank you for watching, everybody.